Alexa, turn on the light. Turn on the light.
Okay.
Jesus, what the fuck?
Hey, Rich.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
I think that Jeremy texted me. He said he was running just a touch late,
Okay.
so we might have to kick this thing off ourselves.
Yeah, whatever we got to do. Do we have people in yet? Yeah, looks like we do.
Yeah, we sure do.
Cool.
Yeah, we still got about 3 minutes though. Yeah, we got Ben here, kind of getting everything recorded, so that's awesome. We got 17 folks out in the audience.
Awesome.
There are 19 folks out there. Got 21 folks registered, so almost everybody showed up. Awesome. Yeah, I think we've got pretty much everyone here, and it is 8 o'clock. And we so yeah, unfortunately I'm not at my my workstation this evening, kind of working mobile, so I'm on an iPad, but we'll make it good. And so I'm Richard Murray. I'm the current assistant director for Winter Mountaineering School, and I'm here with Chris Lang, and we're just gonna go through, how we kind of got started in this whole outdoor winter gambit, and kind of where we've taken our experiences since Winter Mountaineering School, to maybe give folks, a little bit of reference, so that you can kind of see where you're at and maybe where you want to go and kind of see some pathways. And so I know I've got a short PowerPoint. I know Chris does as well. And then so we can run through ours, kind of give you our information, and then hopefully with enough time left, I'm sure there will be. I'm going to run for the audience can chime in and start asking us some questions. There should be a chat, and there's also a Q&A. The Q&A is probably the best one to use because once our director Jeremy signs on in a few minutes, he'll be able to see them in there. So you folks can put your questions into there, and when the time comes, or even as we're presenting, if you've got something, throw it up. For a good stopping point, we can address it, or just later on afterward. So Chris, do you have a big preference as far as order, or?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Well, I know your photographs are a really tough act to follow, so I'm going to go first.
All right, go for
it. All righty. Let me see if I can share the screen on this guy. Should be coming up in just a second. Awesome. Sharing my screen, get everything rotated correctly. Come on now. And back over to PowerPoint. Awesome. So Chris, does everyone have me?
Yep, I can see you.
Awesome. The slide, that is.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, cool.
yep, sorry.
Yeah, so I'll go through kind of, how I got started in this and kind of where I've gone. I kind of started, I think as a lot of people do, as a 3-season hiker. And now I would say I'm a fairly competent recreational alpinist. So yeah, let's kind of take a look at my path and we'll get some questions going. So this was a very grainy, very terrible photograph of my second ever trip to the Adirondacks. It was in August, I'm going to say in the late 90s. Me and a buddy of mine went up in summertime. We dropped off some stuff at the JBL, and then we went up to nab a loop over Gothics and then come back down. And this, I think, was our view from the top of Armstrong looking toward Gothics. And then shortly after that, we got caught in a hailstorm on the top of Gothics with tremendous wind, tremendous amounts of rain. Going down the Orbed Trail, it was like 6 inches deep in water. It was absolutely terrible. Of course, we're wearing like cotton head to toe. It was, it could have been bad. And we kind of rolled into the JBL like just before Packard. And, we knew that we wanted more, but we also knew that we had to get better at it. Otherwise, something was going to go bad. And so, yeah, kept on hiking the Adirondacks in the summer and in the fall. Just super weather. Occasionally the mud and the bugs and things like that, but keep getting after it. And then I had a very under-equipped and very windy day on the top of Cascade in January of 2012. I was in this like wool coat and hat, and like it was super heavy. I had rented a pair of snowshoes, like not from the Mountaineer. And they were like cross-country snowshoes, and one of the rivets fell out. It was absolutely terrible. But it was also very, very beautiful because even though it was super, super windy, it was super, super clear. And it was really awesome. And so I kind of, hey, this is really cool. I need to get better at it. Also, this could be really dangerous. And so then I came to Winter Mountaineering School, and I was a day hike student in 2013. Still rocking that shell, axe, and water bottle, by the way. That stuff kind of lasts. And that was my first day hike year. Went out, I think that was Algonquin that we did. Had a super great time, made lots of super great people, and came back for more. Oh, wait, no, sorry. In the summer of 2013, went to the AMC's Mountain Leadership School. And those of you who maybe know some WMS stuff, that is John Young there in the middle, instructor emeritus at this point, I think. And had a great time with those folks, learned a lot of like this, like that, had a grand old time. Went back for more Winter Mountaineering School in 2014, this time as a combo student. I think the fella up front there in the orange, that I think is Jeremy, our director this year. He was my instructor along with John Booth. And on this trip, we went up the Chicken Coop Brook Slide, and then I think over Basin, and then back to camp. Super, super deep snow, very tough climbing. I think at the end of it, they decided they kind of like gauged the whole group, and they were like, man, that guy Rich Murray is like the only one who had fun on this who was a student. So maybe we should ask him back. And so in 2015 um, was my first year as an instructor at Winter Mountaineering School. Had a grand old time. I think Chris and I, we worked together that very first year, I think. Took a group of giant on an absolute bluebird day, which was super, super awesome. And from there, just been kind of, coming back every year at Winter Mountaineering School as an instructor. Started meeting some folks at winter school who were into more technical climbing, started doing a lot of that stuff. Definitely at this point, pretty much hooked on getting outside, getting outdoors. Started rock climbing indoors, some top rope action, and then, got my trad gear together, got some good partners, started leading trad climbs all over the Southeast where I'm located at now. And yeah, eventually, moved into ice climbing. Had a mountain guides back in 2016. Came up early for winter school, hung out with him for a little while, and then did our normal winter school program. And at this point, I'm kind of looking toward the future, saying, "Hey, okay, I've got this kind of non-technical winter mountaineering toolkit from Winter Mountaineering School. I've got some rock climbing skills at this point, doing a little bit of ice climbing, kind of seeing where this is going." Ultimately, I knew I definitely wanted to get into high altitude or alpine climbing. Whether that was volcanoes out in the Cascades or, at that point, I didn't even know. I just knew like, hey, I want to go in that direction. And so I did. In 2017, I found this group SIET, School for International Expedition Training. I know there's a lot of different groups that do like high altitude programs. Some are more goal oriented, like, hey, I want to climb Rainier. And you go with this guide company and they'll take you up Rainier. And there'll, of course, be an educational component to it. But a lot of that is driven toward, making that summit tag. What I liked about this program is that it was very, very educational focused. It was specifically designed to take people who have some winter hiking and backpacking skills, have some technical rock skills, and say, after this, you should be able to execute your own high altitude or alpine adventure, like within your skill set. So this was a 20-day expedition. Ended up spending closer to a month. Um, Absolute game changer of an experience for me. Super beautiful. Got to travel in a great, great, wonderful area of Peru, and ultimately it was very, very cost effective. Even the flight down to Peru from the East Coast was like not altogether expensive, especially as opposed to some expeditions in Alaska, which I am positive you'll hear about soon. And I have to get up there someday. But this is where I went first. And so we made attempts on three summits during our expedition. Two of them were successful, all over 5,000 meters. We tried to tag a 6,000-meter peak, but there was, we had an illness in one of our rope teams, and we had to send one rope team down. Um, Two ropes that we would need to rappel from the summit. And so we just went as high as the shoulder and came down. It was disappointing, but we kind of, by this point of the expedition, like we were all very much on board with the, just the idea that the summit is great to get to, and you'll get it once in a while, but it really is more about the climb and about the route than the summit itself. Um, so yeah, we started out, we moved camp, go up to a base camp on Tokirahu, which was that high peak that we actually missed on. Can't beat the views even from base camp. Just absolutely stunningly beautiful. And yeah, the summit, one of the nicer summits that we did make in really clear weather was Nevada Washinka. And here we are simul climbing up that last snow pitch up to the summit. So just yeah, of pretty stable snowpack, beautiful day, absolutely wonderful climbing. And this was all like this is like my winter mountaineering school toolkit plus I don't know a different ice axe, a couple of screws, a picket. And as far as the skills, like a lot of these climbs that we were doing, yeah, we were definitely placing protection at points, but there were a lot of times where it was just, no, we're on a glacier rope team, and it's all your winter mountaineering school skill set. It's French stepping and cramponing and ice axe and all of that good stuff that we teach. Um, Made it up to the Ashinka summit. Again, absolutely stunningly beautiful. I just had a grand time at things up there. And yeah, that was our hard point, about 150 meters or so shy of we turned around, hightailed it back to camp, and had a great dinner that our camp cook made for us. So no complaints here. And so yeah, after coming back from that, kind of, that was the whole essence of the trip was, learn how to do this stuff yourself. And so in 2018, during the summertime, planned and executed my first independent alpine climbing trip into the Cascades of Washington, and went with a couple other instructors from Winter Mountaineering School, John Booth and Jeremy Osborne. We were on the Mount Baker Summit, which is a absolutely fantastic peak. We went up the non-technical route. So it was really just a little bit of glacier rope set, and then walk on up with your ice axe. And yeah, no big headaches, no hiccups. Up and down real quick. Had a great Forbidden Peak. We made an attempt on that was more rock, and we just kind of like ran out of time because of some route finding decisions. And then also went Shucksan by the Fisher Chimneys, which is a kind of scrambly, low fifth class kind of climb that was just absolutely incredible fun. We had a lot of fun on that one. Um, so yeah, a little bit of technical rock, a little bit of ice, a little bit of snow, kind of a really nice trip as far as like the variety of skills that we got to deploy. And yeah, just rappelling down, the views are just incredible. The environment is just incredible up there in the Alpine. So here we are, yeah, rappelling down the Fisher Chimneys on Shucksan, which is just a really super fun route. Definitely had some route finding issues on Shucksan, which way we should go. But it all worked out, and we got above the clouds eventually, and here we are on the summit of Shucksan. Who is next? Yeah, and so from what I learned both in the Andes and the Cascades in 2019, came back to Winter Mountaineering School and sparked up the advanced day hike section with my buddy Chris Lang here. We kind of designed the program for returning students, and it's more focused on longer days out, maybe doing more slide climbing, things like that, where you're kind of pushing into this territory of the upper end of what we would consider a safe non-technical objective. Um, and so really launching point, I think at least, let me say, I know Gary back there he's just been out there peak bagging 7,000 meter peaks for the last 3 years. I think that guy Joe has definitely been up more than a few volcanoes. I think almost all of these students went on to either climb or attempt to climb some pretty serious objectives after winter mountaineering school. And currently, I now also volunteer not only for the winter mountaineering school, but also for the American Alpine Club. So I instruct in traditional rock climbing. Inserting your own gear as opposed to clipping bolts or top roping or things like that. Some of my students from a little while ago. And, I haven't been climbing as much right now, obviously because of the pandemic, a little harder to travel and to find, safe partners who are to snag a high point with John Booth over in North Carolina there. And let's say an unplanned night climb down in the Linville Gorge. We had a little bit of trouble finding a rappel station and started running out of sunlight toward the top of the climb, but had a really great time of it anyhow. Climbing by headlamp is always fun. So that's kind of what I've been up to lately, and I have to say I'm really looking forward to precedented times when we get to all be together again in Lake Placid for winter mountaineering school. So that's what I've got, and I'm going to come back into the Zoom meeting here, stop my share, and I'll give it back to you, Chris.
All right, can you hear me?
I got you.
All right, so let's share my screen.
Someone's asking about the altimeter. That is an ancient high gear. I don't even think they make that thing anymore, but I keep replacing the batteries and it keeps running. I know folks have all kinds of new
Rich, I
fancy
got to
ones.
drop for 1 second to share my screen. It's being a pain. I'll be right back.
Of course, I will prattle on about my watch in your absence. And so, yeah, that's just like an old high gear watch. It's barometer only, and it keeps on ticking. What can I say? See if Chris comes back in.
All right, I am back.
I hear you.
All right, so everybody see that?
I have your screen.
All right, so my name is Chris Lang. A little bit of seat of the pants winter trip. Actually, it was November, but it was close enough to winter for me. It's a Lake Colden. I decided to get into to learn what to do and how to do this properly without freezing to death. So I attended winter mountaineering school. From there, I met a couple cool instructors the first year. One of them was John Booth, John Young, who Rich mentioned earlier, and he talked to me about climbing Denali. I said, I'm going to do that. So I said, I'm going to go to Alaska. I'm going to climb Denali, the tallest point in North America. So I kind of went on from there, took some courses with alpine descent in Alaska, went back a year later and climbed Denali. So I've been all over since then, doing a whole lot of different things. I'm going to talk about some of them. And let's get started. So one of the first hikes I did outside of the Adirondacks was Mount Katahdin in Maine. In the winter, and you can see it here. This is Baxter Peak, and then what's it on Palmoa right there on the left side. And from the kind of the middle to the left is what's called the Knife Edge. We did the Knife Edge, and as you can kind of see in this picture, it's a little hard to see, but you can kind of see clouds coming up off the mountain. It was so windy; it was about 60-mile-an-hour winds when we were on the Knife Edge. We had to crawl on our hands and knees to make it across it without being blown over. We'd wait for a gust to come through, and then once it died down, we'd kind of crawl a little bit, and then as soon as we felt it picking up again, we'd stop, and then just kind of crawl across it like that. So Katahdin is pretty ambitious in the winter for the Northeast. We've got a very long approach. In the summer, you can take the road right into one of the main campsites, but that road is closed in the winter, so we have to haul everything in and walk the road. And you can see me here with all my gear and a sled pulling everything in. I think it's about a 12 to 15 mile approach, depending which way you go. This is called Chimney Pond, and you can see kind of the mountain up from there, all frozen over, everything like that. And then here's up on the knife edge. So on the left side, you can see I'm on my hands and knees kind of crawling across the thing. And then on the right side is the actual summit of Baxter, which on the left side, it's up on the very top left of the corner of the screen. That's where the summit was. And that's also the terminus of the AT. So from there, we'll go over to the White Mountains, the Franconia Ridge, which is kind of a classic hike up in the Whites. This is, I believe, Greenleaf Hut on a nice sunny day, but the White Mountains are also very well known for weather changes. This was a few minutes before. This was nice high winds, couldn't have any skin exposed whatsoever. We could stand in this, but it was, nice and gusty, blowing you over. You take one step forward, it pushes you 3 steps to the side. So there's some good cairns up there to follow, but once everything gets covered in snow, can be tough up there. And we were in and out of the clouds here, so like we couldn't see in this picture, but 3 minutes later we could see. So it was kind of back and forth in there. But you got to really know what you're doing and be careful there. You don't want any exposed skin because very thin margins there for anything going wrong. Then over on the other side, the Presidential Range over in New Hampshire. This was from somewhere near Mount Monroe, I believe. This is a long time ago. I don't remember exactly where it was. But we did a winter presidential traverse this day. And this is towards the end, as you can see, the sun's setting. And we're finishing off in a few hours from there. We did make it off the ridge before the sunset, conveniently. It was kind of nice. This was actually a warm day. It was like 35 degrees up there, but it was just beautiful. And then from there, another nice starter kind of higher mountain out in the Cat. It's got a great spot to camp at the lunch counter, so you can make your summit bed the next day. It's got great views, as you can see. You can see Mount Jefferson over in Oregon from there, and then from there it's a couple thousand feet climb to the summit, which took us a few hours the next morning. And then on the way back down, you can glissade all the way back down to this lunch counter camp spot. So something that took us 2 hours to climb in the morning took us 10 minutes to get back down. It was awesome. It was so cool being able to do that and get back down so quickly after that nice long climb. From there, we did this as a warm-up when we went out to Washington because we were going to climb Rainier. So we did this as a warm-up to get used to the altitude. I'm from the East Coast, so I live in the Albany area, and there's not much altitude here. So we went up Adams. Adams is around 10,000 feet. So we got a little bit of taste of altitude. We camped overnight. And then the next day we drove over to Mount Rainier and we did that. And here's some there. So Mount Rainier, we took the Disappointment Cleaver route. With that, you start at Paradise, it's called, and you have a nice big snowfield that you climb up to Camp Muir. We did that. That's a pretty straightforward climb. It's just hiking up like a big slope. There's nothing technical at all about it. You're unroped for the whole way. We slept for a few hours at Camp Muir, and then we took off, I think it was like midnight maybe, for the summit of Rainier. So you can see all the headlamps, everyone getting moving on the slope, and we're all roped up here. So this is technical travel. We did this non-guided. I learned a lot of these techniques when I went to the school with Alpine Ascents, and some of the other people I was climbing with it also been doing this for a long time. So I felt like we knew what we were doing. We didn't need to go guided at the time. This was the sunrise as we were coming up, and this is Little Tahoma right there. That's kind of shark fin there. Some sketchy areas. There's a big reroute here of the main trail, or what was, I guess it's considered a trail going up Rainier. And we had to kind of go over this whole section, and you can see like you were kind of on a slow, like a peak there on a knife edge. There's drop-offs, maybe over 100 feet on each side down into crevasses. So you got to be real careful walking across that, and know what you're doing. Be very careful. We didn't have any protection or belay points on this. It was all just relying on, self-arrest and things like that if you were to fall. And then here's another large crevasse on the way back down from Rainier. The large ones look scary, but they're actually better because you see them. It's the small ones that can get really sketchy because you don't know it's there, and then you break through and you could fall into that. So you got to be real careful with that. Keep your eyes open for that, or just be, that's why you're roped up. That's why you're spaced out, to it would stop your fall from going down into something deep because you're tied up to them. If you're ever in the area, I do recommend going over to Second Beach in Washington too. We went over there after Rainier. It's awesome, awesome spot, some cool trails. Let's see from there. Another trip I did, not really mountaineering, but Grand Canyon, definitely a cool one. I always like to mention that. We did down to the Colorado River and back in a day, which I don't know how well you can read the sign in the Zoom meeting, but it says, do not do this, and something about throwing up there and getting very sick. We did it. It was a very tough day. And if you're not confident at all, you can do that. I do not recommend doing it. We did it. We were there in November, so it wasn't hot, so which made it easier, but it's still over 6,000 feet of elevation gain and loss to do it. But beautiful, beautiful views, much different than anything on the East Coast too. It was my first time being out there, and it was definitely awesome. So another cool place, Zion National Park over in Utah. Left, that's kind of a little shark's fin knife edge. There's chains in the rock that you can hold on to that people, the Park Service has set up there. So it's really, really huge drop-offs on either side, but you feel pretty confident on holding on because you've got nice, real, things to hold on to. So you don't have to like set protection or anything like that. And a lot of people end up going there too. So it gets crowded. It's good to go during the day or early morning. Like in this point, I think we started at like 7 a.m. And I was the first person to get to the summit, and the right is the summit of Angel's Landing. Another really cool thing to do in Zion, the second time I went to Zion, we did the Narrows. And this was I think it was in December. So it was cold there, but you can rent these, Farmer John wetsuit or dry suits, and they have special shoes that you can rent, and you walk down the Narrows, which is basically you're walking in the river there. And you can walk as far as you want. You need to arrange a drive and a ride to get from one side to the other, but highly, highly recommend it if you are ever there to check out the Narrows. Another one, great spot in Utah is Bryce Canyon. I was there, when was it there? 2020, or 2019, sorry, right before 2020. It's the last hike I did before the pandemic. We were there. It's a really, really cool scenery, some great trails there. We spent 2 days there checking things out. And these things are called hoodoos, the formations there in the rock. And then another really cool spot over in California is Sequoia National Park. You've got the big trees there. Some time there. And then, of course, Yosemite. Another great one. Spent 3 days there in 2016, I think it was. We did some climbing, just some hiking around there and general trails, a little bit of snow. It was early December when we were there with snowshoes and stuff like that. Definitely a cool spot. And then shot there. And so getting into a little bit more technical stuff, I went to the Alps in 2015 in Chamonix. And this is a really, really cool spot. I went to this. It was a training course on photography in the mountains. So I was going with a guy who takes pictures for some of the outdoor gear companies. He was kind of the official photographer for Uli Steck at the time. And he was teaching us how to take kind of these shots and do these things while we were up there, while we were climbing. So it's really cool. So what's really neat about there is like we were starting at about, I think it was 4,000 meters, I want to say. And you take basically a ski lift all the way up to the top, and then you hike down from there and then back up to other mountains. So it's a little different than what I was used to. So we started up really high elevation, which for me coming from sea level was a little tough. I had some trouble the second day. It takes a few hours for your body to get used to that, and to even realize that it's under attack and less oxygen at that altitude. So it took me about a little over almost 24 hours before my body was like, I don't like this, and don't come from sea level that quickly. I got a little headachy, got some lightheadedness, and it took maybe about 5-6 hours. I was over it with some Advil and some Excedrin. But it was definitely tough up there getting used to that for me coming from sea level versus everyone else I was in the course with had no problems with it. So some other cool spots in there. This was our first day there. We did this midi pond traverse. And you can kind of see some of the steepness of these mountains and what we're walking on. We're all roped up, doing a running blaze here as we needed, where we have protection set in the snow, and we're clipping into that as we move along. From there, we got a little more steep. So this is another mountain we're climbing up. You can kind of see the steepness of there. We're climbing up there for sunrise to get some shots up there. Here's the other side of that same mountain. You can see we're kind of traversing side by side here over this thing. We're all roped together, just sticking our feet in the snow, moving along sideways on here to get to some rock and get to the summit from the route we were on. Then we get to a real knife edge. So this guy is one of the craziest spots I've ever been, but also the most fun. It felt pretty safe. We had two guides with us as well as the instructor. And we had one guide per two students. So there was, I had one guy teaching us, making sure we had our feet placed, had the rope set for protection and things like that. You can kind of see our rope there. And what they would do for the rope is they basically throw it over one of these rocks. So it was on the opposite side we were on. So if you fell, they were just using the features of the terrain to arrest a fall if we were to fall there. A couple more shots I've got of this. You can see the knife edge of this. We kind of crawl along sideways on this thing, climbing up and down to get along this whole fin. And then here's a top down one of it, how narrow this thing is. Just this real steep fin of rock coming out of the snow. And what's cool about this is on the right side of the screen is France, and the left side is Italy. So it's right on the border. Here's another cool spot. You can see this giant serac kind of in the background. This was the only part on this whole trip that our guides were very nervous because it's a 4,000 foot drop off to the left there. So they made us, you can see kind of the footprints on the right side. We made us stay within that. They set up some protection just to make sure while we were taking these photos. And it was, very, very sketchy. It was icy there, so one misstep and you were, they were very good about what they were doing, but they were making sure we were very careful there too. There's another shot of the same spot a little bit further up. And so here's they were doing some rock climbing. We were taking photos of that. And it's kind of a vertical thing. And you may wonder, how do you get a shot like this? That's how we got that shot. So we were roped in. You can see where the guy up there is on a rope. He's leaning over to take the shot. I'm like going back to that again, just shoot right down to that. And so next one. So Alaska, I'm a little obsessed with Alaska. I've been there 3 times. I want to go back already. I went there in 2011, 2012, and 2018. So the top left is from Denali National Park. And this is, I believe, Mount Healy it's called. It's a nice little hiking trail right off the road there, very well established, easy to, climb up and check these things out. It was a nice little day hike that we did. Bottom right is the clouds. There's only a few days a year where it's not in the clouds, they always say. We were lucky to be there long enough that we did see it not in the clouds. So I went to Alaska in 2012 to climb Denali, and we were successful. We climbed, it took us 20 days to climb the mountain. It was 17 days up and 2 down. And the way you climb the mountain is you go up for a little bit. You have so much gear, as you can see, a bunch of gear on the left there. You climb up with gear and food. You bury some food up there in the snow. You go back down. You camp low, and then you wake up the next morning. You climb past where you buried your gear and set up a new camp.
Wait! You guys didn't have donkeys?
No,
Oh,
we were the donkeys. So doing some of these, there's a lot. I've gone guided and unguided on Denali. I made 2 attempts in Denali. The first one was successful. And so there's a lot of questions when you go to do that. Who do you want to go with? Where you're going and when. There's a lot of, one of the issues I had on the second time was personalities on the climb. You can see there were 3 of us. There were supposed to be 6 of us. Some people left. The people who were planning it left, and I had to take over. And it wasn't the time of the year I really wanted to go, but I went along with the group. We went a little too early. The weather was not good, and that was why we ended up having to bail. So it's something to definitely be aware of if you're doing something like that, where you've got multiple personalities that you're dealing with in a group that you may not have spent a lot of time with. It can be very trying on a long expedition like that. So it's something to be, this was a good group of 3. It was just 3 of us. It was a lot easier to manage, but we did definitely run into some trouble up there with that, because a small group is sometimes tough too when you're pulling a lot of gear. So going on to that. So what does it take for something like Denali? This is my gear from 2012 on what I had. Is everything laid out? Then what does that look like packed up? So this was all of our gear and food for 8 people for 21 days. All those white bags are food bags. You see all our backpacks, and you see our sleds in the back there with our snowshoes on them and things like that. And the way you get into Denali is you take a plane. You can see one of the planes in the back. They fly you in on one of these planes, and then they land you on the glacier. They have skis in the bottom that kind of lower below the wheels, and they land you out in the glacier, and you get off there, and you're on your own for that. Everything you brought, you're responsible for. So here's us loading up to get on the plane. Not a lot of room. On the left side there, the open door, that was where I sat with those bags right in my face, essentially. It's about an hour plane ride, maybe 45 minutes in, but it's one of the best plane rides you'll ever take. Even if you don't want to climb the mountain and you're up there, take the ride in. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome. As we were flying in, and then getting into it. So this was on the glacier there as we're headed up. So you can see we're all roped up to make sure we're traveling properly and safely. It's, we're all covered up too, as you can kind of see there. I think I get into that in another slide. But you really need to know what you're doing with that. I took, there's a requirement when I went with Alpine Ascents to have taken one of their courses to know that you're capable and you understand how to travel roped. Because there's definitely a bunch of things around that, mainly being crevasse danger. So you can see some really big ones here. This is the scale of it. That's I think a 6-foot person on the left there. These things are just enormous. And again, the big ones are good because it's easy to navigate around them. Then you can kind of see what's called snow bridge on the right side, where you have snow, but you can see there's nothing underneath it. So that's when you have to be real careful because you don't know that. So when you're on the glacier. So we have long avalanche probes that will probe down into the snow, will stick down in, and when you can feel it, it's like kind of a feel thing. Like if all of a sudden there's no resistance, that means you hit air, and that's not a good spot to stop or to camp. So you'll probe out an area if you're going to stop for a break or camp, and make sure it's safe before you do. And we'll mark it off with what we call wands, is sticks of bamboo with little flags on the end of them to make sure we have a safe area marked out. And then here's another one. So here's a small one. One of the guys I was climbing with, Tom, fell into this crevasse right there. It wasn't really much, as far as his fall. I didn't even notice. I was the next one in line with him on the rope. All of a sudden, I'm like, hey, where did Tom go? I don't even see him. He was, basically up to his armpits in this, and he just pulled himself out and said, hey, Chris, take a picture of it. I want to send it to my girlfriend. So it was pretty low key when he did it, but it's definitely, so if you're not roped up, that could be very dangerous. Or if you're traveling alone, you might not be able to get out. With practices that you have to follow to do this safely on a glacier. Then a couple of the ridge lines we dealt. On the left is a little thing called Andy's Ridge. It's right across from base camp where they fly you in. It was a nice little climb we did the first time I went there for the training course. On the right side is heading up to high camp on Denali. This is at about 16,000 feet. And then some more stuff. Let's see, sun protection. So you can see on the left side of that screen, I have no skin whatsoever showing. That's me. That's because the sun is so intense at that altitude, it can fry your skin and your eyes. So even on a cloudy day, the UV rays come through and they can really get you. On Mount Adams, which I showed earlier, I had a couple friends. The first time I attempted that, it was a rainy-ish day, and two of my friends went snowblind from that day. Luckily, it was the next day essentially, and they were off the mountain, but they could not see it. Being from around here on the East Coast, and they didn't wear their sunglasses or anything, and they couldn't see the next day. And it was very, very painful. So anytime you're at altitude, you want to keep those sunglasses on. You want to block those UV rays. And then you can kind of see some of the loads that we were carrying on Denali there. You know, you've got big duffel bag on your sled, there's a fuel canister, and then your backpack with all your stuff in it that we're doing our carries with. There's some more, but the scenery is awesome. Definitely worth it. And here's our 14,000 foot. This is like an advanced base camp on Denali. This is a night basin camp is what it's called. Nice big area. It's fairly safe there. Not a lot of avalanche danger, not a lot of crevasse danger, but it can still get stormy. So you can see the walls built around our campsite there. That was to prevent, you know, any winds and help buffer that if a storm were to come through. We actually never had one while we were there at 14 camp, but we did at 17. We spent 5 days sitting in a tent. Have an iPad, a phone, or anything to listen to. We had nothing to do for 5 days waiting for a weather window where it was 25 to 30 below and very, very windy. You know, it was crazy, but we eventually got a window and we made it to the summit. Here's our cook tent on Denali. So we dig basically a pit in the snow. We put this little pyramid tent up over it. And in the center, there's we basically leave a pit table worth of snow that we can use to put the pole in for the tent, and we kind of use that as, you know, eating off of, and we build bench seats around it and stuff like that. We kind of live in that tent on Denali because you don't have enough space in the smaller ones generally. You don't want to hang out there that long. But all down lower on the mountain, 14,000 feet and below, you'll have one of these cook tents and you'll live in that during the day if you're just hanging out or cooking and things like that. And it gets pretty warm in there too. It's nice once you have the stove going, the sun warms it up, and it's actually nice and comfortable in there. Then off on the right, you can see some wands there. You can see we have ski poles and shovels and things like that in the snow, and those we use those as anchors for our tent. We use snowshoes, things like that. We had stakes as well, but you know, kind of use whatever you want to make it easier. If we're not moving for a little while, you use your poles. Lots of digging on Denali. It's constant digging out snow. This trip was in 2018. We sat at this campsite for 3 days, and I think we got 8 feet of snow in that time. It was crazy, just nonstop snowing. And some more walls we had built around our tent to save us from the winds. This is a little bit higher up. And it was very, very cold this day. It was maybe 15 below Fahrenheit. That's looking back down. You can see the team's moving up. And then get into some of the fitness stuff. So to do something like Denali, you need to train for it, unless you're some kind of gifted athlete. Even then you might want to. But you know, you want how to train for something like this. There's a couple tenets to that. There's an awesome book, Training for the New Alpinism. I highly recommend it. If you're looking to get into that, or even just some smaller mountains. It gets into the science behind training and things like that. But you know, kind of the general stuff around it is, you know, for the majority of your training, you want to do something like an easy conversational pace. You want to get your body used to that pace. You know, something like harder is not better. Intensity does not replace, you know, duration. So something like, you know, the analogy they use is Usain Bolt trains for the world record in the 100, 200 meter track events. He doesn't just run those and try and break his record every day. You know, that would never work. It's the same thing with mountaineering. You know, mountaineering is a long slog, moving slowly. You're not running fast. Your heart rate, if it's a dry altitude, it can't even get up high because there's not enough oxygen potentially. So you need to train your body to work in that lower range. And that's a huge part of the training. So looking into here, like, so my Denali training, I tracked everything I did. I had 568 hours of training, and 87% of that was spent at low intensity. And what does that mean? My heart rate was below, for me, my aerobic threshold, which is basically conversational pace or nose breathing, they say. So like if you go for a short run, maybe like half hour or so, if you can run the whole time breathing out of your nose, that's kind of that rate. So you kind of figure that out, do a little bit of test. The other benefit of that is you can train your body. You're training your body to use intramuscular fat stores versus carbohydrates as a source of fuel. So you're able to go longer and not eat as much while you're working out and while you're hiking or climbing, and it really works well for you that way. Your body gets adapted to that over time. You're able to burn more of that as you train more this way. And then some people were asking me in the past about training. So like, what is a sample week for something like this? It was strength training, uphill hikes one day, a recovery run, some more strength training, 2-hour run, and then a 3-hour hike. So nothing too crazy in there, but it does add up over time and it does work. It's amazing. Highly, highly recommended. This was a training plan I did from the authors of Training for the New Alpinism. You can buy them from them. I think it was like $90 at the time, and it was worth every penny of it. To
And they're known as the uphill athlete folks now, right?
Yes, uphill athlete. Yep, that's right. And I think that's everything I have. Oh, and then just some sage advice from Alaska. If a bear attacks, fight a black bear. If a grizzly bear attacks you, play dead. If it starts to eat you, though, you should fight back.
Good advice.
That's all I've gotten in my slideshow.
Awesome. Well, we got a couple of questions floating around in the Q&A section, which is awesome. Tom Duffy's asking, Chris, what were you using to track your heart?
Garmin Phoenix 5X, and I had a heart rate strap that I used with that.
Nice. Yeah, lots of those products out now these days. Everything from Apple to Garmin to everyone's making those things.
Yep. I train my heart rate on a daily basis. I use my Apple Watch now because it's easy, but like on long days, Apple Watch wouldn't last, so I used a heart rate strap.
Yeah, like activity versus training, right?
Yep.
And Bill asks, so he kind of phrased it to me, but I mean, obviously, Chris, you'll have to chime in on this as well. Looking for like an idea of the trajectory, like what's like kind of the progression, the minimum time, if you're like a 3-season hiker, day tripper, non-technical stuff, and really want to get out there and want to get it done. I think that is, first of all, an awesome question. And I would say if I were starting today and I said, well, okay, and I'm in reasonable fitness, depending on the time of year, like you can certainly do a lot of these things in parallel, and it's also going to depend on your objective. I would say definitely come see us at Winter Mountaineering School, because there's nothing going to be better than getting onto a big mountain and like already knowing all about like getting your crampons on and walking around and using your axe while everybody else is fumbling around. Because then you can focus on the things that you can only learn on the big mountains, right? Come see us in the Adirondacks and get as much as you can, and then take it that next step. So I would say definitely over a winter, get more winter experience and get that kid dialed in. I would say in parallel with that, you definitely want to get at least some technical skills. Almost any glaciated mountain, you're at least going to have travel and crevasse rescue background. That can be harder to get on the East Coast. So a lot of times it's helpful just to get any kind of technical rock experience, where you're at least, learning how to deal with the ropes, learning what, different protection systems are, different strategies, learning about redundancy, learning about the different types of equipment. And that's all going to be very, very helpful. Learning your knots, right? There's only like maybe a half a dozen knots that you're using over and over and over again. So like that stuff, you can all learn that in parallel with, of course, this, enormous volume of training, like Chris is saying, that, you want that high volume, low intensity training on a regular basis. And, that's going to vary widely from individual to individual. But if you want to go, from like a 3-season hiker, I don't know. I think if you got on a good program and stuck to it, you could, I don't know, Chris, if you had anything to add to that.
No. Let's see. That's about right. I mean, I started very quickly. I got into it in 2011. I climbed Denali in 2012. Very fast progression. I went to Alaska only a few months after I did my first winter mountaineering school, and that was kind of my real first winter hiking experience. I had a little when I was a kid, I guess, but it was 20 years before that. It was not really much. But it depends on how much you want to invest in it. The technical stuff is almost easier to learn than some of the softer stuff too. I would suggest, like campcraft, knowing how to wake your stove, how to camp. That's some stuff we teach in winter school. But
How to
just
stay
be comfortable with that. How to stay comfortable. You shouldn't be fighting for your life in camp. You should be able to make a camp, get yourself set up, and be fairly comfortable in it despite the cold. And the Adirondacks where we are, it's a great training ground too, because we had a lot worse stuff here. I'll climb Mount Marcy in a lot worse conditions. And then something like on Denali, I wouldn't move. You're not going anywhere in that where, okay, I'll go up Marcy or I'll go up Cascade, depending on your skill set. But, it's on the day and what the weather is. Oh, I'll go take Cascade real quick. Yeah, it's really, really cold and windy. I can't see much, but I'll go grab it real quick and come back down. Versus a big mountain, you're never going to do something like that. So you end up being exposed to tougher stuff here than you do out there. There's a flip side to that is you don't want to get overconfident because you're here and say it's a small mountain. I'm not saying that, but you have to know your skills. You have to be aware. But as you get more and more comfortable with that, you can do more and more here, and you can kind of judge how you behave in that weather and what gear you need, what you need to have accessible. That's always a big thing on these mountains. Like you saw, some of the pictures I had were all roped up. We've got sleds tied to us. You're tied to other people. You need to make a gear change. You can't just stop every few minutes. We were climbing with a guy, we were stopping every hour. So I was hiking. And, when I'm training alone, it wasn't a big deal. But when you're with someone, a group tied to that, you have to get into different things. So you've got to be aware of that. You've got to have your gear dialed in so you can take your mittens on and off, put your hat on and off. Like you saw some of the pictures I had stuff hanging all over my shoulder straps, because they're a lot nice and easy, accessible things that way. So you can make real quick changes without even breaking stride a lot of times as you get practice with it. Same thing with, putting on your crampons. Practice putting on your crampons on and off. Put down some cardboard or plywood or whatever to not destroy your floor, or do it outside. But, practice taking them on and off. Practice putting them on with your gloves on, your mittens on, whatever it may be, because that needs to become second nature. When I was on Denali, we did it every single day. We got up to high camp. We went to put on our crampons to go for our summit bid. It took us half hour to put on our crampons, every single one of us. It was crazy. Like you just messing around, putting your boots on and your crampons on, took a half hour, something that should take, a few minutes. It depends on the person, how quickly you can pick that up and how good you are at it. But it's, it's muscle memory, a lot of this. You get used to it, doing it over and over and over again.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I found a comfort, looking back on my time as a student in winter mountaineering school, and going on to do the things that I've done is, like you said, just like the campcraft, the staying dry, the staying warm, but not too warm.
Yep.
Being able to focus on the climb itself and being able to focus on the things I was being taught there, rather than focusing on, stuff like where are my mittens, and just like operationally, and to get that kind of attitude and that sense down, and kind of learning how to slow everything down, how to be a little bit generous with yourself, because things always take longer when it's cold. Things always take longer at altitude. And getting that experience, I think, was invaluable, because it really did let me concentrate on the things that you literally can't learn. It's beautiful scenery.
Can I hop on this one? I actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, folks. Jeremy.
And you should introduce yourself. Yeah.
Current director making my cameo for the evening. So I think that one of the really important things to distinguish in that question is guided versus unguided. And I recall a student we had maybe 3 years ago, and I never actually heard back from him, but he was a very fit individual with zero winter mountaineering experience. He showed up to our program in January, had a May trip scheduled to Rainier, which is kind of when successful summits of Mount Rainier start happening, and then had a early August or late July trip to Denali scheduled that same year. and thought he was going to love it. And so if resources aren't an option, all these trips were, our trip was instructed with Winter Mountaineering School, but Rainier and Denali were guided. And if you're truly nuts, you can take it one step further. And right after you get off Denali at the end of August, beginning of September, you can start making your way to Kathmandu, Nepal. And they're never going to let you do Everest on trip one, but you could do, Amida Blam, or you could do, oh shoot, what's the other? There's another super
Island.
Yeah, exactly. Island Peak, which is, that can take you to the next level even further still, preparing yourself for a spring summit of Mount Everest. And so, assuming that each one of those trips goes successfully, guided with someone who has infinitely more experience, you can accomplish that progression from Mount Everest in 18 months, as long as your fitness is there, your body can handle it, blah, 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 blah. And you hire enough guides and you've got, $150,000 to throw at the project. But if you want to do that on your own, I'm 10 years into this game and I'm starting to look at Himalayan peaks, knowing that there's still 3 steps between now and then. So it's important to realize the difference between guided accomplishing those goals and unguided accomplishing those goals.
Nice. Yeah, we should talk later. We'll go to Peru together next summer.
I'm going with skis, man. I'm already working on that one.
Nice. Who you go with? You going on an expedition yourself, or you going with somebody?
No, I'm trying to get a couple patrollers that want to go ski something rad down there.
Awesome.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. They don't have any money. Yeah. Any other questions for these guys? Sorry to interject so much, but
nah, man, this is the slideshows are over. This is it. And actually, we're almost at time, so it's
Did you do an intro spiel, or should I do that now?
Why don't you talk us out, Jeremy?
Okay. So like I said, I'm Jeremy Osborne, current director of Winter Mountaineering School. This is my last year of directing. Next year, Rich is taking over, and I get to go back to just being a normal instructor that gets to have fun at Winter Mountaineering School. But the key of our program, the most important things that I always like to tell people is, first, we're an all volunteer instructor corps. We do this out of a sheer love for mountains when they're covered in snow.
Jeremy, can I interrupt you for 1 second? We've got something in the Q&A that I think is just exactly up your alley. I think you might have a good answer.
I was wondering if you have seen petite women on the mountain, because my wife. Yeah, they all live in California, where it doesn't actually get cold. No, I mean, it's, my wife would answer this question infinitely better than me. She's 5'4", 5'5", weighs 110 pounds when she's wearing a bunch of mountaineering gear. And the key for her is warm liquids and extra layers. If I'm going out in a base layer and a shell, she's going out in a base layer and 2 insulating layers and a shell. So, we're all dealt the body that we have. The important thing to learn is how to adapt that body. I'm hoping to actually convince my wife to come to Winter Mountaineering School next year to help instruct a course with me that hopefully Rich will approve at our spring meeting. And if that's the case, I joke with her, we may end up buying her an 8,000 meter down suit to come to Winter Mountaineering School in the Adirondacks, because she doesn't -20 so much. She does the mellow California, like 15 degrees. But yeah, in all seriousness, yes, absolutely. I've seen, met, and know many petite women that get rad in the mountains on a fairly regular basis, and it just requires more clothing and a different just a different mentality, a better understanding of what temperatures do to you. They don't have, my wife doesn't have near the comfort temperature range that I do in one set of layers. She's changing clothes in the mountains
Yep.
quite, or adding layers quite more frequently than I am. When I can suck it up, she can't. And so that's, very easy to overcome, though, not a challenge that's not worth tackling.
Yeah,
Very-
and Tom chimed in to add, yes, there's some great guides in the Adirondacks who are women, and yeah, they are up there and they are getting it done all winter long.
You
there's
can
plenty. I
see
know some-
some of my
they-
pictures. My girlfriend was with me. She's 5 foot. She was on
Tiny.
Denali with me. She was about just about every single one of those places with me. And different leg lengths is one thing we have to learn, especially when you're tied together. Traveling as a team, that's definitely something to learn. But she's able to do it. It's just she has different gear, needs than I have. But there's the other thing on Denali is going to the bathroom is much more difficult.
I would hold it for 3 weeks if I were a woman
Yeah.
person.
I think she wanted to when we got there. It didn't work out.
It's terrible.
Kosher, my bad. But anyway, so Winter Mountaineering School, the couple things that I always like to hit on is we're an all volunteer staff that love the mountains when they're covered in snow and love sharing our knowledge. But the other key thing is we are a fundamental mountaineering skills program that teaches a lot of these basic skills. And like Rich hit it hard, and Chris did as well, that we all started at Winter Mountaineering School, and from there we've gone to great lengths. I wasn't part of this presentation, but my most recent trip was to Nepal, kind of checking it out and doing a little recon and realizing that yes, I do actually want to go climb an 8,000 meter peak at some point in my life, and probably ski off of it would be the other half of that requirement. I'm a big skier. And so, but anyway, the other thing that I want to do want to pitch hard is we're going to go back to normalcy hopefully next year. We're starting to plan, see a lot of you folks there as students next year to start the process. These guys showed you some really rad trips that they've taken, and whether you decide that having a hired guide is the way to do it, or going as an independent climber, either way, the skills that you can learn at Winter Mountaineering School can make those trips go from a dream to reality. And so our programs are designed to give you that foundation skill to handle snow, to handle cold temperatures, to handle winter camping, to handle winter meal prep, and all of the above. Yeah. And so the other half too is now that you guys have all attended one of our programs, you're all now officially Winter Mountaineering School alumni. So please keep checking in with our website. We'll midsummer post our final official decision on Winter Mountaineering School. We're 80K, or I'm sorry, WMS, Winter Mountaineering School. So WMS alumni. You guys are all now alumni of our program. So please go join our Facebook group. Excuse me. There's a lot of good folks on there. Many instructors, many past students, many people that can answer more questions if you have them. It's a great place to go find initial partners to do some hiking in the woods in the wintertime. Good gear question answers can happen there. These two guys are pretty prevalent on it. I'm not as much. I have been this winter out of need, but then I'll disappear again and not do much on the Facebook. But there's definitely plenty of our other instructors are way more involved. Yeah, that's all I've got. If you guys have anything else, go for it.
Awesome. No, I think that wraps it up for me, and we're at time, so we can
See one more.
let all these folks thanks have their evening.
Oh, that was just thanks.
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much,
everybody.
and thank you for all the great questions and for hanging out with us on Winter School Wednesday.
Winter School Wednesday.
All right.
Using that all winter.
Oh man, you got to do it.
Oh, the last pitch, while there's still people on the last pitches, we have just a few presentations left, and a couple of them still have space available. One of them is Introduction to Ski Mountaineering that I'm doing in 2 weeks. Homemade gear and modifying and repairing your gear is next week, and I believe that's still has a few slots left. And then Rich and I are doing the grand finale in 3 weeks, glaciology and glacier travel. So
Yep, indeed. And I just saw the participant list. We had Gary in here tonight, who's been out like totally getting it done and like all the big mountains all over the place. So I'll have to catch up with him on Facebook though, because this format doesn't allow for conversation like that. But we'll get it done.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple more presentations left. If you like this one, go sign up for the last couple that still have a few slots left somehow. And then we're also working on getting some of the other ones online. That'll happen as it can when we get around to it, when we have time for it. But they'll all end up somehow, hopefully most of them will end up on our website or on YouTube or something. So keep checking our website for links to that.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, folks. Have a good evening.